Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program, and encourage your friends to do the same. Oh, and by the way, if you are watching us on YouTube and Facebook, please make sure hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified as soon as we go live, and you can participate in the live chat as the program is taking place. Also want to encourage you, if you haven't already done so, if you haven't done so recently, make sure that you visit FPC Gear. That's fpcgear.com, fpcgear.com. That's right. Go there. It is the place to go to get all of your cool Pro 2A swag. They got everything from t-shirts to tank tops to hoodies. You name it, it's all there at fpcgear.com. It's a great way to support the Second Amendment. And guess what? You look good doing it. That's the place to go, folks, fpcgear.com. All right, let's get into today's topic, shall we? There are few gun laws that are a better example or a broader example of the attempted taking of our fundamental rights than are red flag laws. Now, for those of you who do not know what these are, this is where an individual who you may or may not know can go to a judge, get you deemed a danger to yourself or others, and have your right to keep and bear arms taken away, have your rights taken away, and then also, by the way, have your firearms taken away. Because in places like California, they issue what's called a gun seizure warrant, where law enforcement is basically handed this piece of paper, said you're a danger to yourself or others, and may or may not have guns. Go and search any place you think they might have a gun and take their guns. Mind you, you don't know about this. This was an ex parte hearing. The ex parte meaning you don't get to be there. You don't know about it. It's all just bad, and bad in every single way. It's a violation of multiple of your constitutional rights, right to due process, right to face your accuser, right against unreasonable search and seizure. Oh, and need I say, right to keep and bear arms. Now, FPC a little time back actually did a research paper looking at red flag laws, and I realized we don't talk enough about this. So I wanted to have on policy counsel for the Firearms Policy Coalition, Mr. Matt LaRosiere, to talk more about it. Matt, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Craig, what's going on?
Man, another day, another dollar, another day trying to keep the man from taking my guns.
You got a
It's
whole
like,
dollar today?
huh?
You got a whole dollar today?
A whole dollar. Well, with inflation, it ain't worth a whole dollar. But, you know, starting to be like some of that foreign money where you like have to have
Yeah,
$1 billion, a billion of them
it's really getting there.
in order to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't even want to ask what the gas is out there, so I won't. It'll also date the show.
Yeah, man, dude. Let me tell you, it's beyond crazy. We'll just put it that way. It ain't coming down anytime soon.
Mm-mm.
It's put it this way. It's almost cheaper to go shooting.
Brutal. Yeah, you're not thinking about the range. You're thinking about getting there.
Exactly. That's where it gets
Yeah.
expensive, is getting to the range.
We have
Oh
to
my, oh
go.
my. Okay. So
Go
hey,
to the range.
so tell us about the research and the paper, the policy paper that you did on red flag laws.
Yeah, so this was actually further back when they were first coming up. I, with some of my colleagues, did a deep dive into these policies to take a closer look at them. It turns out, yeah, they're just as bad as you thought. Actually, worse. you know, our old president would say, "Oh, we'll due process later. Take the guns first." Turns out that's impossible. It's called due process because it is due before the government takes your liberty or property, and here they want to take both your liberty and property ahead of any proper legal process. And it might surprise you to know that's not okay.
I thought so, but being in California, you never know, because that's how they are. California was one of the first, at least one of the first big states to actually institute this. And what was crazy about it is, I mean, they wanted everybody and your mama to be able to do it. And now it's just everybody and your coworker that
Right.
can do it. Um, but what's a trip is now the way in which they're measuring success, and this is the funny part, they're not judging it based on decreases in shootings because shootings haven't gone down. They're not judging it by decreases in suicides because with firearms because that hasn't gone down. They're measuring it by one thing: how many guns have we confiscated?
Or how many orders have we issued, which is a very bizarre way to measure these things. And then we can also see that in many states where red flag laws are introduced, virtually all of the orders come from like 2 or 3 counties that have very peculiar political leanings. And I just wonder what that might mean.
Well, it might mean that there are people of a particular political persuasion who don't like guns, or at least don't like their citizens,
Right. They're people.
their people to have guns. Yeah, I know in Florida, what is it? Broward County had
Yep.
like what percent? I
Almost
know it was
all
some
of
crazy percent
them.
of the red
It was
flag
almost
laws,
all of them.
right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're not doing them up in Collier County. They're not doing them in, Lee County. Which are also fairly populous. They're happening in Broward, Orange,
Right,
and the other counties that happen to glow radioactively blue on the map.
right. Well, and they go. What's funny is so you even got some. You even have some. And I only use the term Republican because there are many Republicans who think that just because they have an R after their name that they are pro-gun.
Yeah,
Just
regardless of what they
in case
do.
you're one of them, no, doesn't mean that.
Yeah, no, you have to be in favor of guns,
In
actually.
favor of people owning guns,
Right.
you know, not. And by the way, the people, not just some
Yeah,
special people that
not just cops.
not just cops.
Right.
Um,
And speaking of that, you mentioned that it had in California, they wanted it to be everybody and their mother who can issue it. And then they go and say in some of these states, are like, oh, well, no, we're not as extreme because only law enforcement can petition. And it's like, oh, and who has law enforcement's number? Who can call the cops? Hmm.
Well, do you let me ask you this, and I don't know if this requires legal analysis or if you have data on it or if this is just a suspicion. Do you think that some law enforcement could possibly use this as a way to get around what's it reasonable search and seizure? The ability to not just cause. What's the word I'm looking for?
Well, it had
Probable
what?
cause.
Probable cause. Oh, to make an arrest and stuff.
Or
Um,
just to even
supposed
search
to
someone's
be.
home.
Well, they're saying that they're having these probable cause hearings, right? They're saying that they're doing these things,
Hmm.
um, but it's all crap. It's just a bunch of crap.
Mm.
And they're justifying the existence of these procedures, and by reference to how many they're doing. So they
Right.
have this weird incentive to grant them, even when they don't make sense,
Hmm.
because it's another statistic to pad.
Right.
It's
Do
it's
we have
just
any data on how many on what percentage of people actually who receive red flag orders against them actually wind up getting their rights back once they go to court?
we have seen that. Well, especially getting their firearms back has posed a huge problem, because it costs money to petition for the return of your property, and overwhelmingly they target disadvantaged people.
Mm.
So we're seeing the majority of the people who have their arms seized are not getting them back.
So what's the rationale they give for not giving people their guns back?
They they don't. They're hiding behind a process here, and they're not facially saying, they're not like saying they're doing it on purpose. What it is that there's complicated and convoluted procedures that people have to go through. Oftentimes they wind up having to hire a lawyer to petition for the return of their firearm. And you think about it, like, these are often working class people. In fact, most of the time, as with most provisions in the criminal law, they're applied disproportionately against people who are economically disadvantaged. And so somebody who works very hard for a living, they lose their $500 handgun. That's huge. That's a huge loss for them. Are they going to be able to justify getting that $500 handgun back with an $800 lawyer?
Well, exactly, and that's the common thread there, and is, and once again, you're not, because it's a civil proceeding, not a criminal proceeding. You're
Mhm.
not guaranteed legal counsel. They don't pay for your
Right.
legal counsel,
Right.
even though you've done, once again, keep in mind, folks, you've done absolutely nothing wrong. You've broken no law. It's been deemed you are not a danger to yourself or to
Right.
others. And yet, and still, you are not getting your guns back.
Well, and oftentimes they ask you to prove that you bought the gun.
Right. Which
It's
is
like,
odd. It's like, wait. You took the gun from me
yeah.
out of my safe, which I gave you the combination to, that everyone knew was my gun because they told you I had a gun.
Yeah. I see that all the time where they're like, give us proof of purchase. It's like, what if you've had that gun for 20 years?
Right. Well,
What are
I
you
know
gonna
that in particular in California, a lot of the municipalities are guilty of that, which is why I do maintain the purchase records of all my firearms. And I by the way, don't keep them with the gun, largely because if they confiscate the firearm and they take the
do?
paperwork,
Yeah.
they don't. They're not going to hold on to it, and I have no faith
Right.
that they're going to hold on to it. I have faith that,
Whoops.
yeah. Whoops. What paperwork are you talking about? What purchase? Yeah. No. Um. Wow. That is so. What are some interesting things that you found out? Just give me some interesting little factors. Like, for example, I mean, that was a great one in terms of how few people actually get their guns back.
Right.
Right. Any other little
Well,
interesting tidbits
so
from your
here's a
research?
horrifying bit, right? Do you remember swatting?
Yes.
This is proving to be a new mechanism of swatting. This is proving to be a new mechanism for hateful, cruel people to weaponize the state against their personal enemies. And if you dig hard enough, you can find almost anyone will have said something untowards at one point,
Right.
which is natural in a society that allegedly has the right to free expression.
Right.
So you'll dig this up. Hell, you might even lie. And what's the penalty?
None.
There isn't one.
In most cases, there is no penalty. Now, another thing that I noted that was interesting is that in some cases, you don't even get a chance to face your accuser. I mean, even
Yes.
after the fact, even after they've taken your rights, there's no guarantee under the law that the person who accused that you'll even know who it was who said you were a danger to yourself or others. And you won't get a chance to refute the charges that they used to get your guns taken away.
Right, because it's all top secret, because it's an emergency.
Right.
This is an emergency pre-crime hearing. This is Minority Report stuff. You have to trust the system.
Right.
Just trust. Why don't you trust the system?
Well, it's amazing how the people who say, want to defund the police tell us that we're supposed to now trust them. Well, if I didn't trust them before you defunded them, why would I trust them now?
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, and I'm like, look, folks, I'll tell you in a second. I am not anti-law enforcement. In fact, I am quite the opposite. But I also know that in many cases, they work for the government. And not everybody who gives them their orders, believes in our liberty, our rights, and our liberty. In many cases,
But they took an oath.
Right? Yeah, that you mean those words that they uttered?
They said the orders.
Yeah, that means as much to them as Thursday night karaoke. Just saying.
Wait, they don't like that either?
They're just words. They're
hate
just
these
words. I'm not saying I don't like them. I'm saying that you're not going to take my freedom over karaoke. Yeah, no bueno, no bueno.
Yeah, but you are still coming to Thursday night karaoke, right?
I will be at Thursday night karaoke.
Okay, good. I was getting really worried.
So, all right. So, right now we're looking at the federal government is now looking at possibly giving money to municipalities or to states that fund red flag laws. Are there any things in particular, any caveats under which this even makes any sense?
I mean, for sure. Right. Okay. So yeah, this policy makes a lot of sense when you think about the fact that the safest society that we could have is one where we are all locked in individual solitary containment cells.
Right.
that would be completely safe. And so, pre-crime Minority Report style stuff is a step towards that ideal. And thus, if your goal is a completely safe society, this is totally a step on the road. As long as you recognize that the safe society is, everybody is hogtied at all times.
Well, let me ask you this: Have you ever read either an existing or a proposed red flag law that you would? I'm not saying you have to support it, but you would at least be constitutionally okay with.
No, there's no. They don't even come close. And I've read all of them. That's easy. That's the easiest question you asked me.
Well, probably, but I just want people to understand that there are people out there who believe that you can write a red flag law that is good. I've seen guys who are there's one radio show host in particular who's an attorney who brags about the Arizona law, and I'm like, not their law, but the governor had proposed one. And I'm thinking to myself, the one thing I've learned, if I've learned anything about the law since I've gotten involved with gun laws, is the law is kind of like medicine. It's like, unless you are an expert, unless you have spent time reading and understanding firearms law, there's a lot of stuff you miss, right? And not being an expert in that area. And I'm like, dude, stop saying that, because what you're saying just makes you sound dumb. To gun owners anyway.
Yeah. No, it's a huge problem. And I don't know why it's taken such hold. It is grossly ineffective and disgustingly destructive to not only our right to keep and bear arms, but our rights to expression and our Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizures. It's against our right to due process. It's huge. Right. It's a huge problem. And, the do something disease is getting people to just hum along with it.
Is there any legal action out there or anything like that that's taken place that might help us find some resolution in the courts in our favor?
I don't think so. Was that you teeing me up to say something? Because I don't think so.
Oh, no. I didn't know if there was or there wasn't. I was just asking the question. All right, so we know there's not. So I did not ask that question.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? How about if I ask you, why haven't we seen more litigation regarding red flag laws? Do you got an answer to that?
Well, it's a fairly new thing, but the stuff there has been some, and God knows we're working on it. God knows that we're watching, and it's a huge problem, and these need to be opposed aggressively, which is what we're setting out to do.
All right. Well, let's start that question again so I can ask it in a little more confident manner.
Okay.
And we'll get your answer. So, all right. So as bad as these things are, how come we're not hearing about more litigation or more lawsuits relating to red flag laws?
Well, so of course they're a new type of policy, right? And of course we're watching and monitoring the situation and trying to find the best way to fight these. It's something that we're definitely setting out to do, right? It's something that is definitely on the radar, but it's hard to develop a good case immediately, Well,
there's a lot, and that's another thing I know is there's a lot that goes into identifying a good case, because you want something that can be precedent setting. You not only do you have to have a good case, but you have to have a good plaintiff.
Yes,
it's got to be the right you've got to have the right circumstances, because what you don't want is you don't want something that's so narrowly decided that it doesn't have the broader impact that you really kind of need when you're investing the kind of resources that you invest in these cases.
And the other thing is that the cards are stacked against us when we're out fighting for our rights, and they will take any little escape hatch that they can find, and so we have to vet these cases so thoroughly, which is really unjust. It should be that when this happens, we can just confidently go forth, but we want to win and we want to make good law.
Well, and that's the thing is that separate from being just a regular defense attorneys, your goal is not just to win for that individual, but to make case law.
Yes.
And once again, not only are these these are relatively new, but the proliferation of them, in other words, the expansion of them, who can do it, and what are the parameters? They're doing what we know they always do, and that is they're eventually going to overreach.
Mm-hmm.
And we are then going to have.
Well, they already have.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
they're going to way overreach. It's kind of like, it's one thing if they put their, their one finger on the scale over the line. When they get that whole hand off there, then we can chop it off.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like we've got people that are constantly poring over cases, that are constantly looking for opportunities. So it's definitely not something we're sleeping on.
Right. Now, speaking of that, FPC actually has a legal hotline that if people believe their rights have been violated, and once again, especially if it comes to red flag laws, you can just contact them. I think if you just go to fpc.org, it's one of the first things that you'll see on the website, right?
Nope, hotline.
Right, it's right there, the legal hotline. It can't take every case, but once again, they're looking for opportunities to be able to make law, looking for opportunities to be able to change. Because here's the thing: when you
get our rights back, that's the goal.
What?
Well, the goal is to get our rights back.
Well, exactly. And if we're going to do that, we got to make sure that we're investing. Each round we're investing is it goes down range where we intend it to go, and lands on target. All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and call it a day. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. Matt, thank you for coming on the program.
Always
as
a pleasure.
always, it was a fun conversation and learned a little something.
Right on. Pleasure.
Right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matt LaRosiere. All right, folks, well, that's going to be it for this episode of Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing and encouraging your friends to do the same. Remember, this is a fight for our civil rights. Got to use them, or we're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.